You're listening to The Rabbit Hole with Eric Ramos, only on LA Talk Radio.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for staying on board with me to episode number 5. Welcome. So you're in for a treat today. We're going to go down the mind control rabbit hole. And toward the end of the episode, I'll bring it back and you'll see how this rabbit hole applies to a lot that's happening today. So the idea of mind control, let's, I think it's Wikipedia. Let's look it up. Wikipedia. Let's see how they define mind control. Now, just to clarify for Wikipedia, it's not a source, but it's a good start. Some of the information there is good. You can verify it and you see that it holds. And some of it's propaganda, and I'll go into that as well. But sometimes the definitions are pretty good, and sometimes it's a good starting point. So let's go. So Wikipedia defines mind control as brainwashing, also known as mind control. It says menticide, coercive persuasion, thought control, thought reform, and forced re-education. And it says, let's start over. It says, also known as brainwashing, mind control is the controversial theory that purports that the human mind can be altered or controlled against a person's will by manipulative psychological techniques. It goes on to say, brainwashing is said to reduce its subject's ability to think critically or independently, to allow the introduction of new or unwanted thoughts and ideas into their minds, as well as to change their attitudes, values, and beliefs. Now that's a that's a lot of info there, and it does give you some clues to some things. But of course, we're going to go down the rabbit hole. Now let's look at that again. It says brainwashing, also known as mind control, and you guys can look this up. Just do a Google search, type in mind control, and when you see the Wikipedia option populate, click on that, and you'll be able to see the same info. And it says. It says the controversial theory that purports that the human mind can be altered or controlled against a person's will by manipulative psychological techniques. Well, they just did that right there. Did what? They're trying to manipulate us through psychological techniques. How? Well, they're putting that it's a controversial theory to ambiguous words, because controversial, that suggests that, well, okay, so does that mean that since there's a lot of controversy about it, that it's not possible to verify the truth or falsity of it? And so since it's not possible to verify the truth or falsity of it, then it must therefore be false. So that's what they're trying to imply. Now, someone might say, do you have any proof that they're trying to imply that? No, I don't. But that's the purpose of using ambiguous terms, because it can induce that thought. And then when you try to call people out for inducing the thought, then there's no evidence that that was their intent, which is the whole purpose of the manipulative psychological techniques. And it says theory. So that's even worse. So theory, so you can't verify it. So not only is it something that can't be verified, but it's also controversial. And then it says that purports. So not only is it a theory that can't be verified, but it's also controversial. And in addition to it being controversial, it also just purports. It just kind of tacitly states that the human mind can be altered or controlled against a person's will. But it's just a theory. And not only that, it's just controversial. And moreover, they're just purporting that that's the case. All of that is, this elucidates my point. So whoever put this definition there, for whatever reason, it seems that they have a vested interest in not shedding light on the manifestations of mind control. They want us to think that it doesn't exist, that it's not possible. Now, if you stay on board with me for this podcast, I'll show you that it is possible and that it's not just a theory, it exists. So whoever put that in there, because here's the thing with Wikipedia, you can put info in there. The founders of Wikipedia, they just want information to be available to everyone. That's their agenda. But under various topics, there's going to be people, they're going to put info in there. Anyone could put info in Wikipedia. Now, the where it becomes annoying is, what if I counter it and I get, I might have the DSM, for example. I might get a manual that the psychiatrists and psychologists use for their definitions, and get the definition in there of mind control and then put that in the Wikipedia. But there might be someone, they keep trying to refute it and counter it and argue it and challenge it. I don't have time for that. I have two jobs. So there's people, they make it their aim, goal, and ambition to counter stuff in Wikipedia, which goes to show they have too much free time. So for me, I don't have time for that. So if people are going to allow Wikipedia to um, determine how they're going to view the world, to each his own. But that being said, it's a good starting point on your research for certain topics. But of course, you're going to want to use other sources. So let's go on. So it says, brainwashing is said to reduce its subject's ability to think critically or independently, to allow the introduction of new or unwanted thoughts and ideas into their minds, as well as to change their attitudes, values, and beliefs. So let's look at, there's another source. I believe it's, let me look it up 1 second. Yeah, so this is the Mayo Foundation for Medical Education and Research. So this is a valid source, and you can go to their website. It's www.mayoclinic.org. Mayo, Mayo, clinic.org. And sorry about that. Let me turn my ringer off. So it says, now, here's the definition of hypnosis. It says hypnosis is a changed state of awareness and increased relaxation that allows for improved focus and concentration, which is also called hypnotherapy. Hypnosis usually is done with the guidance of a healthcare provider using verbal repetition. Pay attention to that, folks. And mental images. Pay attention to this. This is the Rabbit Hole podcast. So we're going to go down some rabbit holes. We're going to do some deep dives and unpack certain things. So if you are a glutton for new information or information in general, some of this may be new, some of it may not. Have your notepad out. My intent here is to inform, my listeners so that you can be empowered. If you're empowered, I'm happy. My goal is met. I get a dopamine fix if I ever say anything that causes someone to become empowered and they go on to achieve great feats in life. I get a dopamine fix from that. So I hope that this can all help you. So it says hypnosis can help you gain control over behaviors you'd like to change. It may help you cope better with anxiety or pain. Now, again, this is the Mayo Foundation for Medical Education and Research. www.mayoclinic.org. So hypnosis can help you gain control over behaviors you'd like to change. It may help you cope better with anxiety or pain. Although you're more open to suggestion during hypnosis, you don't lose control over your behavior during a hypnosis session. So, do you see the contradiction between the Wikipedia definition and this definition of mind control? So let's go back. Let's read it again. So Wikipedia says brainwashing, also known as mind control, is the controversial theory that purports that the human mind can be altered or controlled against a person's will by manipulative psychological techniques. So that's the key there, where it says against a person's will. You see how subtle it is. Now let's remove a person's will. Let's remove that part. I'm going to read it again. It says brainwashing, also known as mind control, is the controversial theory that purports that the human mind can be altered or controlled with a person's consent by manipulative psychological techniques. Now, what's the difference? Well, a person can give consent without being aware of it. Now, someone might say, well, what do you mean? Well, I'll show you. Let's go back down to the definition of hypnosis. One second. So, hypnosis is a changed state of awareness and increased relaxation that allows for improved focus and concentration, which is also called hypnotherapy. Hypnosis usually is done with the guidance of a healthcare provider using verbal repetition and mental images. During hypnosis, most people feel calm and relaxed. Hypnosis typically makes people more open. You see how it says it makes people more open to suggestions about behavior changes. You notice how there's nothing there about consent or against their will or with their will. There's nothing there that says anything about that. So if you can, now let's unpack that. It says hypnosis is done using verbal repetition and mental imagery. During hypnosis, most people feel calm and relaxed. Hypnosis typically makes people more open. You need to notice how it doesn't say hypnosis typically asks a person's permission to make them more open to suggestions and behavior changes. It doesn't say that. It says hypnosis typically makes people more open to suggestions about behavior changes. So let's analyze that. Let's zoom in and let's zoom in on the details. So what happens if a person is calm and relaxed? What if I get some random Joe Blow and they're calm and relaxed? And through verbal repetition and imagery, I'm able, or the person who's using the process is able to modify a person's behavior. It doesn't matter whether it's with their will or not. Once they're calm and relaxed and their conscious mind, the guardian of their subconscious, or some people call it unconscious. I like subconscious better, but some people like unconscious better, and I understand why, but I like subconscious better. So if a person's is relaxed and their conscious mind, the guardian of their subconscious, is relaxing, out to lunch, trying to take a break, because you that's why we have to sleep. The conscious mind needs to rest. So when the conscious mind is relaxing, someone or a program, why do you think they call them television programs? That's not by coincidence. Television, that's the mental images, and program, a TV program, that's the verbal repetition. So television is the mental imagery of hypnosis, and television program is the verbal repetition aspect of hypnosis. And it says most people feel calm and relaxed. So you get lured into a calm and relaxed state, and while you are in this calm and relaxed state, then the verbal repetition of whatever information and content they want to influence you with begins, combined with the images. And this is what I call propaganda. So through propaganda of the verbal repetition and imagery, you see it every day. Billboards, the bus drives by, you see a billboard, or you see an advertisement, the verbal repetition combined with the mental imagery. And through repetition over and over and over, hypnosis has two forms. There's the common form where wherever you go to a therapist, you sit down, you relax, you count backwards. You count, sorry about that. You count backwards from 10, and then you're in a hypnotic state. That's one form of hypnosis. There's another form. Another form is you might watch a television program and or you might be listening to a song and the music that has a type of a hypnotic beat, or you might be watching a television show or movie or a program, and the mental imagery is hypnotic. And through this hypnotic mental imagery or hypnotic words, your conscious mind is lured into a calm and relaxed state. A lot of psychiatrists, psychologists, neuroscientists, they call this the alpha state. And when the mind is in the alpha state, it's more susceptible to suggestion. And when the mind is more susceptible to suggestion and the conscious mind is out to lunch, any types of ideas can be implanted there that drive and direct a person's behavior without them consciously being aware of it. So remember, this podcast, we're doing a deep dive into mind control. It's time to unravel this. When I go to work and on my lunch break, I get out and I go eat places. Um, when I get off work, sometimes I go eat if I'm not in the mood or I don't have the energy to cook, and I'll go places and eat. And this is 2024 now, and I've been doing research into this topic for some time now, since October of '98, and a few years before then, I was researching into consciousness. But October of '98, I really started doing the deep dive into this topic, and because we're stuck in the rat race to some in varying degrees, and sometimes we get out of the rat race and we don't spend responsibly, and we end up back in the rat race again. And when you're in the rat race, you don't really have a lot of free time to do some of the the, the things you would like to do. Some like to travel, which I like to do as well. But I like to research things. I'm curious about how the human mind works. I'm curious about the universe. So that's my real uh, pasatiempo. And I noticed in 2010, I really became adept at this topic. It was, I really became aware of it. And that's a lot of years of different books. And between 2012 and now, the mind control it's the new pandemic. Like it's almost like, let's say on a daily basis, if I go and interface with the public for various reasons, at least 40% of the people I encounter appears to me, and I'll go into this later as well, appears to me that they're under some form of mind control. And I'm not judging them. It's just an observation. I'm not saying, oh, well, that means I'm better. And who cares about that? That's not even my thought process. I don't have time to be making those kind of judgments. I have a hard time dealing with my own self, much less spending time trying to judge others. I don't have time for that. It's just an observation. So, and there'll be, I'll encounter a lot of people, at least 40% are under some type of mind control program. And again, I'm not judging them and I'm not knocking them. There's various reasons for this, some known, some unknown. Some of the reasons could be because we're in the rat race. They're in the rat race. They're always working. They don't really have time to be thoughtful about what they're doing. So when they get home from work and they want to relax, they turn on the TV or they're listening to the radio. They're not paying attention to these things that we're talking about now. So they're more susceptible to these types of devices, which as a result, they end up under some form of mind control. So it's not because they're dumb. It's not because they're malicious. They just were caught unawares. So that's why I want to bring awareness to this topic, so that your mind is not at the disposal of some of these characters out here that are just always up to no good and they're bored. A bunch of wealthy cluster B personalities. We'll do a deep dive on the cluster B as well. But meanwhile, in between time, do a Google search. Type in gluster. Yeah, type in gluster. Type in cluster B personalities and do the deep dive, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So imagine if those people are a billionaire or a millionaire and how bored they're going to be and how they look at all of us like cattle and sheep. And they look at human interaction as a game, and they get a dopamine fix by causing someone to get tripped up. That's how twisted their thinking is. And so these are the people who are controlling, they maneuver their ways into certain positions to manipulate people. And so that's why I want to raise awareness to the topic of mind control, because raising awareness of this topic will help you to fortify yourselves from it, so that you don't wake up one day and you shoot some lady because she said, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. Or you don't wake up one day and then you try to assassinate the president because you were socialized, you were socially conditioned to be susceptible to mind control, so that someone from the other side of the world can manipulate you to carry out their nefarious agenda. And so now here's another interesting topic, or another interesting take on the idea of mind control. Now, this is for the skeptic, because there's always going to be a skeptic. There's some people that's their thing. They get a dopamine fix from being a skeptic. But notice this though. There's no skeptics on anything that's interesting or empowering, right? Now, what if someone said shit tastes like ice cream? You're not going to have skeptics come and have all these forums about it, because they could care less whether someone believes that or not, because it's not empowering. If someone harbors that idea, it's not going to help them reach great heights. So they could care less about it. But any idea or thought or concept that has the capacity to raise someone to great heights, now all of a sudden all these skeptics come out the woodwork. It's weak. That doesn't work on me. It might work for some neophytes very well then, and hopefully the neophytes can tune into the podcast and will help you raise your consciousness as well. So you notice how there's always skeptics, and then their arguments, when they present their argument, there's never anything solid. They're always shifting topics. They can't stay on topic. They're always changing topics. We're going to cover that as well. Now, for the skeptic that, for various reasons, is skeptical about the existence of mind control, well, simply look at all the cults that have existed just in the past 50 years. All these cult leaders. If mind control was not real and it didn't exist, then how were those cult leaders able to get that kind of control over those people? That's the evidence there. We see it right in front of us. So I'm not going to allow no skeptic to gaslight me. I know what I saw. We saw the damage that all those cult leaders carried out. Jim Jones, Charles Manson. There's some other ones we're going to touch on as well. Robert Shin. There's a documentary about him on Netflix called "The Dancing with the Devil." I'm going to try to get one of the girls from that documentary to come on our show, so we can have her on the show, and she can unpack all that stuff for us. And I was actually a member at that church back in '98 and '99 as well, so it will be an interesting um, interaction. So, but again, to the skeptics regarding the idea of mind control, the existence of it, just look at all the cults. You can just type in cult and do a Google search cult, and you'll see a whole list of things come up there and all the damage these people did. How they were able to brainwash people and convince them of things that just For a rational person with a healthy mind, you don't see how they would fall for that. But some did because they were using mind control tactics. Now, here's the other counter argument for a rebuttal for skeptics of the idea and existence of mind control. If mind control wasn't real and didn't work and wasn't effective, why would the US government spend millions, trillions of dollars funding a project covertly for 20 years? Now, someone might say, well, what are you talking about? MK Ultra. Just Google it, Project MK Ultra. And at least Wikipedia, they're honest about this, but probably because it's easy to verify it. So, according to Wikipedia, Project MK Ultra was an illegal. Well, I mean, we already know it was illegal because there was a lawsuit, and the people who sued, the families, they won. The government had to pay them millions of dollars to the subjects of these experiments. So, Project MK Ultra, M as in Mary, K as in kite. Project MK Ultra was an illegal human experiments program designed and undertaken by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency to develop procedures and force confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. It began in 1953 and was halted in 1973. So 20 years. Imagine the funding, our tax dollars, 20 years. They have to have the facilities to get the people, the labs to do the research. That wasn't cheap. So if it wasn't real, why would they spend 20 years and all that funding if it wasn't real? Skeptics. MK Ultra used numerous methods to manipulate its subjects' mental states and brain functions, such as the covert administration of high doses. You see the covert administration of high doses of psychoactive drugs. Now, I'm not laughing at the people that were victim of this. It's just the idea. Covert administration of high doses of psychoactive drugs, and it says especially LSD and other chemicals, without the subject's consent. They also subjected them to electroshocks, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, and other forms of torture. Now, I don't know if anyone has ever seen Mike Tyson's podcast on YouTube, but if you haven't, you should. It's he has some good takes on things, and he's very transparent. He's come a long way in his journey, and I'm proud of him. And he talks a lot about this. There's this. It's called the toad. So, and there's a scientific name for it. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but the toad. There's this toad in the deserts in Mexico, and it secretes some type of fluid from its pores that, when ingested, puts a person into a heightened state of awareness. It's like a LSD trip, DMT. Uh, Joe Rogan talks about DMT a lot as well, and so imagine, because it says right there, it says the covert administration of high doses of psychoactive drugs. So imagine someone gets some fluid from that toad and they slip it in your drink. You're not even aware, and then you start tripping out. Imagine that. Well, that's what was happening for 20 years in America. And if you don't believe me, I have a great movie recommendation that covers this very well. And it's funny because when I saw the movie, I didn't know about MK Ultra at the time. I just thought it was entertainment. I was like, wow, this is interesting. But it's a great movie. It's with Mel Gibson and Julia Roberts from the 90s. It's called Conspiracy Theory. And after knowing what I know about MK Ultra, now when I see that movie, I look at it like it's a documentary, like it's a soft disclosure. Because everything that happened in that movie from the beginning to the very end covers some of the people's testimony that were subject to these illegal experiments that were conducted on them. So, if you're interested in the project or the topic of MK Ultra, I highly recommend that movie, Conspiracy Theory. It's very entertaining. Mel Gibson did a great job in that movie. Uh, so moving right along. So now I read to you the definition of mind control according to Wikipedia. Now, this is how the American Psychological Association defines mind control. So they define it as an extreme form of social influence used to indoctrinate an individual in the attitudes and beliefs of a group, usually one that is religious or political in nature. So notice how there was nothing about theory or the theory being controversial or the controversial theory purporting certain outcomes. They're transparent here. They just go into it. They say, yeah, mind control is an extreme form of social influence that's used to indoctrinate an individual and the attitudes and beliefs of a group, usually one that is religious or political in nature. Hence, some of the cults we mentioned. But it just doesn't stop there, religious or political. There's a countless means that a person can use mind control as an extreme form of social influence used to indoctrinate an individual. Now, what about the police officer that killed that lady this past week who called the police because she thought there was a prowler outside of her home? And this is a woman at home in her home clothes, comfortable, casual, and the police officer that shot her was so under mind control that he thought he had to take her life. So this is why it's important to be aware of these things so that you can fortify yourself from that kind of programming. What kind of mind control program does a person have to be where they know they're showing up somewhere because someone is asking for assistance and they think that that person's a threat to the point that they have to shoot them point blank range in the head? It's under mind control. The Manchurian candidate right there. There was no threat. And so people, this is why you have to be aware of these things because you never know when you're dealing with people out there in the world. You never know when you're going to encounter someone who's under some kind of mind control program. You have to be alert, especially if you're a chosen being of light. Now, that's probably going to be cause controversy. Well, either you get it or you don't. If you don't, that's fine. Go ahead and be a skeptic. We can argue all day. We can meet and have a debate. Who cares? But for those of you who get it, you know what I'm talking about. If you are a chosen being of light, when you go to interface with the world for whatever the transaction is, you have to be alert. You can't just be going about hunky dory in la la land like everything is peaches and cream. There's a battle there's a battle for you. They want you out of here. Now, who's they? I don't know who they are, but I know they exist. How? Well, because look at the world. That's not just by chance or nature that we see all these weird things happening out here. Someone's causing that. Now, someone might say, well, who are they? I don't know. They're too cowardice to show themselves. Now, some people might have theories as to who they are, and we know the common names they always say. It could be that. It could be them. But I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's more. Or maybe it is them and there's others. Who knows? But I know they exist because I see the effects of their nefarious machinations. Now, if someone threw a rock at me and I don't see who threw it, does that mean the rock wasn't thrown? So someone threw a rock, hits me right here, I start bleeding, but I didn't see who threw it. So because I didn't see who threw the rock, does that mean the rock doesn't exist? Does that mean the rock wasn't thrown? Does that mean that the cut on my head is imaginary? Come on, guys. And that's for the skeptics, not for my listeners. And thank you for joining me. But for the skeptics out there, or for the train of thought that's a skeptic to what I'm saying. And when you encounter those skeptic trains of thought, now you know what to say to them. So it says an extreme form of social influence used to indoctrinate an individual in the attitudes and beliefs of a group. I'm constantly encountering people who don't know me. They don't know me from Adam. They've never seen me a day in their life. But because they're under mind control and they're running various mind control programs that have been embedded into their subconscious because they were lured to sleep, they think they know me. They think they know how I think. They think they know what I know. Imagine the audacity of someone to think they know what a stranger knows. I remember I was in a discussion and we were talking about something similar, but not this deep. And I mentioned propaganda, and I'm going to go into that here. And this person, I don't want to say their gender or their race, because even that can cause controversy. This person says, propaganda? What is that? What is propaganda? So in that response, the implication is that word doesn't exist. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just making that word up. For if that word existed, I would have known the definition. But because I don't know the definition, it must not exist. The audacity of that person. Or another train of thought that could have been driving her behavior, person's behavior. See, I kind of gave that part away. My bad. Could be, well, I don't know what that word means. And since I don't know what that word means, it must not exist. Because there's no way this freaking retard would know of the existence of a word that I don't know exists. But this person doesn't know me. So what would give them the confidence to know or to feel that they know what I know? Mind control and propaganda. They've been brainwashed to try to put people in boxes based on appearances. And this is a form of mind control. This is a mind control program. And we're exposing that here and now. And this is episode 5. Thank you for coming. I'm still a novice in the podcast space. So forgive me for not having all the bells and whistles on this podcast that some of the other experts out there have. If you be patient with me, I promise you I will add the bells and whistles as time carries on. And so let's look at brainwashing. And this is the same source. So this is the American Association or the American Psychological Association. The American Psychological Association. So this is how they define brainwashing. A broad class of intense and often coercive tactics intended to produce profound changes in attitudes, beliefs, and emotions. Targets of such tactics have typically been prisoners of war and members of religious cults. Reflect on that, my fellow listeners. Targets of such tactics. So if they could target a prisoner of war and members of religious cults, what makes you think they can't target communities? That's no far stretch. So a broad class of intense and often coercive tactics intended to produce profound changes in attitudes, beliefs, and emotions. Targets of such tactics can be racial groups, What if they target an age group? What if they target a gender? What if they target a specific demographic? Because a religious group, that's a demographic. Well, what religious group do we want to target? Oh, well, let's target Christians this time. Well, okay, we're bored now. We're done with them. Who else do we want to target? Okay, well, let's target Muslims now. Yeah, we're done targeting prisoners of war. Let's target some people of color, or let's target some immigrants now. And they can target them with these coercive tactics that are intended to produce profound changes in their attitudes, beliefs, and emotions. So, people, you have to wake up. And when I say you, am I talking to the listeners? No, because if you're here, welcome. But you guys know who I'm talking about. The people at large, people in general, they need to wake up. Why? Because they're being targeted. And why are they being targeted? They're being targeted to have a change in attitude, belief, and emotion, to cause upheaval, to cause division. So it's important to be aware of these things so that you're not susceptible to this kind of manipulation, and you're not out to lunch while the puppet masters are rewiring your brain against your will and consent. Now here's another definition they have on the same source for coercive persuasion. It says systematic, intensive indoctrination of political or military prisoners using such methods as threats, punishments, bribes, isolation, continuous interrogation, and repetitious instruction. That's the key there, repetition. See, with hypnosis, you get their consent. You sit down in the chair, they do the little thing or whatever other process they use to do the relaxation. That's one form of hypnosis. The other form is through repetition, over and over and over and over. People in the self-help space are aware of the use of repetition through affirmations to reprogram the subconscious mind. You can reprogram your subconscious mind through repetition. Another form of hypnosis, a milder form. It takes longer because you're doing it over and over again instead of moving the conscious mind out the way and just planting that content directly into the subconscious. Another way to do it is just relaxing yourself and repetition over and over and over and over again. 21 days, 2 months, just to get started, phase one. We'll get into that later in other podcasts as well. And then it says, as a countermeasure, this is important here, this is interesting. It says, so systematic, intense indoctrination of political or military prisoners using such methods as threats, punishments, bribes, isolation, continuous interrogation, and repetitious instruction. As a countermeasure, military personnel may be trained in methods of coercive persuasion resistance, which are designed to enable them to function and survive to the best of their ability under such adverse circumstances. And then it says broadly, a controlled program of social influence to bring about substantial changes in behavior and attitude in members of a group. So with what you guys have all heard so far, I've presented enough information to you to be aware that you can be programmed to hate someone against your will, against your consent, and without your knowledge. If you're not aware, and if you're out to sleep, you can be programmed to hate Joe Blow without you being aware of it. Unless you have, how it says here, it says as a countermeasure, military personnel may be trained in methods of coercive persuasion resistance, which are designed to enable them to function and survive to the best of their ability under such adverse circumstances. So these podcasts hopefully can help you to develop coercive persuasion resistance. from all these mind control programs that we're being bombarded by daily. When we watch TV, when we watch a program on TikTok, social media, the news, these billboards, advertisements on the bus, advertisements on the bus benches, all the data that we're bombarded with on a continual basis, information from people. Hopefully, if you stay on board with me and you trust me and you're patient with me in my process and you want to grow with me, you'll be able to develop as well coercive persuasion resistance. And you'll be able to recognize these devices like that. So now let's see, there's another term I want to introduce you to that's part of this. Psychological warfare. You may have heard the term before, PSYOP. PSYOP is short for psychological warfare. PSYOP, psychological operations, a military tactic. It says a broad class of tactics, and this is the same website, American Psychological Association. It says a broad class of tactics designed to influence the attitudes, beliefs, and behavior of soldiers and civilians, that's us, civilians, with regard to military operations. You know, a person can, or let me take that back. A group of people, an organization, can carry out military operations. They don't have to declare it. I mean, they should, it's lawful, but they can still do it. Just because they're not declaring it doesn't mean it's not military in its function. You know, a lot of the propaganda we're bombarded with on a daily basis is military grade propaganda that would qualify as psychological warfare. Now it says soldiers and civilians with regard to military operations. These include attempts to bolster the attitudes and morale of one's own people, as well as to change or undermine the attitudes and morale of an opposing army or civilian population. So let's make it even more clear. It says these include, let me start over. This is good stuff, people. I hope you write this down and take it to heart. It says this is psychological warfare, a broad class of tactics designed to influence the attitudes, beliefs, and behavior of people. And these include attempts to bolster the attitudes and morale of one's own people, as well as to change or undermine the attitudes and morale of another people. So they can target a group of people through psychological warfare in order to undermine the attitudes and morale of targeted said people. So if we have a pie and we divide it into various slices, and we see one slice of people where whoever they are, X group, and they're targeting one slice, one group, one demographic of people using these tactics unabated, uninterrupted, and we're seeing the effect of these tactics on that demographic of people, and we don't say anything and we laugh about it because it's not us. Okay, well, then when we're targeted next, what are we going to do then? So the wisest course of action is when you observe it, speak out about it then. Don't wait for it to come to your own doorstep, because by then the people who you could have had help you are now gone. Now you have less allies. So be aware, be alert. Wake up, stop being asleep. One more. I got 1 minute left. Propaganda. You can look it up. This is the Britannica Dictionary online. You can look it up, www.britannica.com. Propaganda, the dissemination of information, facts, arguments, rumors, half-truths, or lies designed to influence public opinion. I'm going to stop right there. Thank you all for joining me. Stay tuned for the next podcast. I have some interesting guests coming for you all, and I appreciate you. God bless you.
You're listening to The Rabbit Hole with Eric Ramos, only on LA Talk Radio.